Hi, I'm Kim Hodges here at the White Oak Library in Crest Hill. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a watercolor daylily. If you want, you can pick up at the branch a copy of this, just a line drawing, so that you can use either carbon paper or trace with a pencil on the back and then transfer by drawing the lines on the front, and that'll transfer here to your watercolor paper. So today we're using watercolor paints. You can use a set this size or even smaller. As long as it's watercolor, you can get those pretty cheaply. I am using a number 6 brush. This one is a Cotman brush, but any number 6, or actually even if you have a flat brush, this is a round. Anything you want to use that you're comfortable with will be fine. I'm also using a Sharpie permanent marker. This is an ultra fine point, so the little tip. And I'm using that because when you transfer your drawing, that'll be waterproof. And then I'm using watercolor paper. This happens to be Artist Loft, but you can use any 140-pound or higher watercolor paper. So let's get started. If you decide to draw by hand, you can just copy the pattern that we've given you, and you just start drawing angled lines and curved lines until you create almost a triangle pattern. Okay, so these flowers are 2 separate kinds of triangles. Okay. So this one's got a little bit of a loop, and you just go like that. So you can see how this is kind of a triangle, okay? But then the other petals are more frilled. So you can draw them like this, wavy lines, and then a U, wavy lines, okay? And then this one looks kind of like 2 parentheses, okay, and then a U, and then this one is super frilly and big, okay, and then so 3 of the petals are going to have a different pattern with a line down the center, okay, 3 we just drew. And I'm using a Sharpie for this because it's waterproof. So when you go to paint later on, these lines will not smear. So I'm just drawing in 2 little curved lines at the bottom for a different color balance. And then you can draw in 3 little stamens for your flower. Okay, so this is looking okay-ish. I think I'm going to extend some of these lines a little bit. If you're freehanding, it doesn't have to be exact. You can directly copy if you want more of an exact print. So and you just want to draw so that the lines are behind the other lines, and not crossing them like that. And again, these are just the curvy petals, and they are approximately in a triangle, okay? This one looks a little bit different, and it's bigger than the other one, okay? Now, you can change anything you don't like about the picture. You can add things if you want. So say you want a butterfly or a dragonfly or something like that. Feel free to add that. And need the little stamens. And these are just circles on the end of a stick. Which is pretty straightforward. Okay. Okay, and I feel like there's this petal missing here or something. But we're gonna add this cluster of blooms up here and over here, and then finally the leaves, okay? So why don't I just put this cluster of blooms, they kind of look like bananas. So if you can draw a banana and just draw a bunch of them together, then you are all set. And this one is passing behind this petal here, so it's in the background. Okay. And I'm just drawing a line to help define these. Okay. And then there's another set over here. And they don't have to be exact. That's the beauty of this process. Flowers are very forgiving, so if you aren't perfect at drawing it, then it doesn't really matter. It's still going to look like a flower in the end. Okay, so the next thing is to draw one of these arching lines for a leaf. Okay. And I'm just going to draw a line down the middle of it to help further define that. Okay. And you have to remember to draw in these little lines to fill in if there's any of them in the blossom area. So if you see this other one, the blossom is actually above the leaf. Again, it's not critical. It's still going to look like a flower when you're done. So let's draw another one here. Okay. So these just help draw your eye through the picture. There's another one on the bottom here, and it's going across like this. Just a curved line, and it's paused when we run into the flower and then restarted on the other side of it. Okay, and then finally there's two more leaves on the bottom at an angle. Okay. And again, if you want to draw something else like a butterfly or a dragonfly or a ladybug or any of that, this side over here of the painting is a really good spot to put something like that. So this is almost done. We have to add these little curved lines that I forgot just to match with the other flower. And that's basically done. So now we're ready to move on to the painting, and your finished painting is going to look a little bit like this. We're using warm colors and cool colors in a contrast. This is a line and wash technique using watercolor. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on this. I'm just going to leave this painting here as a reference. Basically what you want to do with watercolor is start with your lightest colors. So I'm going to start with a yellow. You may or may not have as many colors as me. If you have a smaller kit, all you have to do is mix the colors. And I'm starting to apply yellow with a wet brush. It's actually fairly dry for watercolor. This isn't an expansive, super wet wash where you're going to curl the paper. You want to add just enough watercolor to get a vibrant color. Okay? So we're doing 3 alternating petals as yellow, and the center is yellow, and then 3 petals as orange. Okay, so if you do all the yellows first, then you don't have to worry about your water becoming contaminated with darker colors. So these I'm just going to go ahead and paint over in the center because I'm going to put a darker color on top of them, so it doesn't really matter. And I'm just dipping into the water periodically as needed to get more yellow activated. And I'm using my lightest yellow. And again, if you've only got one yellow, that's perfectly fine. That's what you're going to want to use for this. Okay. And another general tip on using watercolor is that if you make a mistake, like you go outside the lines or something, you can rinse your brush and get clear water, and you can erase most mistakes. So there really isn't a lot of problems with that in watercolor, unlike acrylic. So I'm just filling in the center with this yellow. We're also going to make the individual buds yellow, and the lines that are defining the frilly petals yellow. So again, for the center, because I'm going to put a darker yellow, and if you don't have a darker yellow, you can mix an orange or a red to get a darker color. So you just continue painting the yellow and dipping into the water as needed. Again, there are about 3 petals. I can put another one over here because you can't see the 3rd petal on this side, but it's there. It's just overlapping underneath the other petals. And then the yellow line actually continues on the center of these alternating petals. And you don't have to be perfect at drawing the line. If you get a little bit outside of it, it's going to be covered up by the orange that we put in anyway. So just get these drawn on both of the flowers. And you want to try not to drag your hand through the wet parts of the painting. That would be a bad idea. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. So I'm going to kind of darken these up and see if that's what I want, or if I want a darker yellow. And then we're going to move on to painting the little bud phase. So again, you just dip in the water and dip onto the paint before coloring. And you want to make sure that you're not using too much water, because that'll dilute the paint and your colors will be very faded. And if you want, you can actually mix other colors with this while you're still using wet paint, and it'll give an interesting sort of blur, or you can do it once it dries. So I've got little tips of green on most of my buds to give it a more natural look. Okay, and this one, I'm going to color all the way down the stem, even though I'm going to fill that in with green. I'm just going to use this light green right now while they're still slightly wet, and give it a few drops at the end. And again, I sort of went outside the line there. It's not really critical, but if I wanted to clean that up, all I have to do is get some clear water on my brush, and it will essentially erase itself when I run the brush over it. So, but again, this is just for fun. So if you step outside the lines a little bit, who cares? So let's get this brighter orange color. And most of these colors would be in a standard watercolor set. So even if you have like an 8 or 10 color set, you're gonna see these yellows and oranges, okay? And again, if it's not exactly the color you want it to be, all you have to do is mix the color, okay? So orange would be yellow and red together, and you can add either more yellow or red, depending on how you want to do it, okay? So I'm just filling in this orange area of the flower. Again, these are the alternating, every other petal is going to be orange with yellow at the base. So, and these are just daylilies. If you want, you could make them any color you want. If you don't particularly like orange, you could make them purple and yellow, or you could make them just about any color you want. They come in reds, yellows, purples, maybe not blue, but there are even some greens that you can get. So they're pretty versatile. So I'm just going to continue filling in the orange areas of the painting. Okay, so we can switch over and start doing the cooler colors of the painting, the blues and greens. One thing you might have noticed is the flowers are somewhat outlined in a turquoise color. That's just to give them greater contrast. You can do that or not do that depending on how you feel. So what I'm going to do is actually mix a little bit of color, and I just do that on any of the plastic surfaces of the paint box. So I want to get a certain amount of blue into my green. So I'm just mixing kind of a turquoise color with a green color. And I'm going to use that on the bottom side of the petals. And that's going to mimic sort of a shadow because it's got more blue in it. So it also just adds a little bit more color and variation into the painting. And again, if you sort of don't follow the lines exactly, it's probably not going to hurt anything. And then I'm going to go with sort of a lighter green. You can also add yellow. So the colors that work together for this phase are basically green, blue, and yellow. And if you mix those, you're going to get either a more yellowy green or a more bluey green. And you want the yellowy green kind of on the top of the leaf and the bluey green on the bottom. Again, the amount of water you put is going to change the intensity of the paint. So if you want a lighter color, you add more water. If you want a darker color, you add more paint and less water. Okay, and when I drew this, I'm sort of realizing that I want to change something because this stem is following a path here and I don't see the other part of the stem. Now that's not in the original painting, but I'm just going to draw it there. That way I can fill it in. And again, I need sort of like a greenish color for these stems because it's a little further down. Okay. Stem there. And again, I can darken up some of the green that's on the tips of these. Just because I want there to be a certain level of contrast. Okay, so what I'm looking at compared to the original, this one is not quite as vibrant. I think I used a lot of this darker orange, okay? Now, so if you want that, you can either mix more red with your orange and or use naturally occurring darker orange. So let's just fill some of this in. And I'm not necessarily going to fill all the way to the edges on this one, just for fun. It doesn't necessarily have to be. There can be variations on the petals, but you get the idea. You can see that's much more vibrant. And again, that's just by adding some red to your orange or using a darker orange. The other thing that I haven't done yet is to outline in a blue, or you could use purple, any sort of color that's contrasting with the orange and yellow. So what I'm going to do is get some of this blue here, and I'm just going to outline a little bit to create some contrast. Now this is sort of like making shadows and the flowers, but it's without all the effort of accurately reproducing shadows. Okay, and you can see how it makes the colors pop out even more. Okay. And I just got some orange on myself. Okay, I'm going to touch up that orange area that was not entirely dry. But you can see how forgiving watercolor is. So let's outline some of these. And I'm not even doing the full outline on the smaller petals because it doesn't seem necessary. There are already enough vibrance with the amount that I'm putting on. And if it were a true shadow, it would not completely outline the petal. It would be coming from one direction. So you can pick like the left or right side of the paper and focus on that as your shadow source versus light source if you want. Or you can just outline the whole thing because that tends to look okay too. It's pretty flexible. Let's do this on these guys. Okay, so that's pretty much how you draw a few daylilies and paint them in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching this video. I just wanted to walk you through the final product and the one that I painted today. There are some slight differences. If you want a darker final product like this one, you can wait for this to dry and then follow up and paint over the dry areas with more color. Alternately, if you use less water when you're painting it in the first place, then you'll also get a darker product like this. But as you can see, they're both beautiful, and there's going to be variation in paintings, And so I hope you enjoy what you get as your product. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on our YouTube channel. And thanks so much for watching.